Good morning. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am super excited for this video because it's super different, and I know that like I've been saying that with all of my videos, but seriously this one is super different. Probably going to be my most important video up until now at this time, so I'm really hoping that you guys will enjoy this. So unless you know me personally, you don't know this, back in January I recommitted my life to Christ, and I ended up getting baptized in February and basically just turned my life around. I was really living like a sinful life, just, you know, partying, sexual immorality, and I really decided to turn that around. I got involved with a church that was in my local hometown. Basically really I felt took me in and really loved on me really hard, where I felt like, you know, this is something that I want to do for my life, and I just felt the presence of God just creeping into my life, and there's just been so much that has changed. Literally my entire life has changed. And so with that being said, I wanted to make this video on one of the biggest things that changed for me when I committed my life to Christ, because it was something that I struggled with my entire life. I don't remember ever not struggling with this, and I feel like that it can help other people as well, just to hear really my testimony, and just for me to give you some biblical advice and point back to the Bible where this is talked about and how important it is. And with that being said, what I'm talking about is friendship, godly friendships, and the importance of having godly people in your life 24/7. So without further ado, I would like to get into this message. This is my first time doing this. I'm super nervous, super unorganized, to be honest with you, so I'm really going to try my best, and I really hope that this helps someone. One of the things I first want to get into is just the history that I have with friends and my friendships throughout my life, and how it has affected me, and how God like just plucked me out of that situation and put me into such a godly, loving situation with my friends. Growing up, I always had difficulty keeping my friends. I always had like very few friends, so like it was a certain group, and that group would change like every 2 to 3 years. I'm 27 now. I'll be 28 next month, and so even in my adulthood that continued, and it didn't help, you know, that, you know, you have different jobs, you're in college, things change, classes change, and so you really lose those friends that are in your life, because your life is constantly changing and people are going one way and going the other, and so it's just like dispersed. I was often hurt by my friends. I would hate to admit this, but I have discovered through coming to Christ, I'm actually a very sensitive person. It's easy to hurt my feelings. I just hide it. And so I would become very hurt by my friends very easily. I felt left out by them. I felt ostracized in a lot of ways, like culturally, because I just didn't fit into like a cultural standard that my other friends fit into. And so it was just something that I really struggled with, you know. And so growing up, like I became very isolated. Like I was the type of person where I was super hyper independent, which saying this on camera is crazy to me, because like I never wanted to admit these things, but you know, when you get close to God, like he starts revealing things about you. I was extremely hyper independent. I've talked about this before. I would go on whole vacations by myself, which there's nothing wrong with. I would do it again. I had a great time. But it wasn't that I didn't have really necessarily people to go with. It's just that I didn't want to deal with them. I didn't want to be annoyed. I didn't want to be hurt or feel left out. And so it was easier for me to just go on a vacation by myself. And I was very self-isolated. And what I noticed is back in October, I had left a relationship that I had been in for like 4 months, but it kind of went downhill really fast. And in September, I started to notice that I was reconnecting with God, because I was so upset about how this relationship was going. I was leaning on God and trying to lean on his understanding as to why this relationship was going downhill. At that same time, I had a friend who I had been pretty close with for the last 2 years, someone that I would probably consider to be one of my best friends at the time. I felt myself like just feeling that friendship going downhill. So I have my romantic relationship going downhill, my friendship with this person going downhill. And so I really started to lean on God at that point. Not for the right reasons, but that's just the truth. Like, I was leaning on him because I just didn't understand what was going on. What I want to concentrate on is not my romantic relationship, but that friendship, because I think that God was trying to teach me a very valuable lesson with that friend. Like I said, we have been pretty close for the last 2 years. She was very helpful in a way, but I really felt our relationship coming to an end, or our friendship coming to an end, because I felt that she was unwarrantedly like attacking me, like just kind of like just this meanness, this mean spiritedness. I wouldn't hear from her very often. You know, she was kind of like doing her own thing and then I was doing mine, and I just really felt this discord between us. And so I went into this peak of self-isolation. This was when I took the vacation by myself. I wanted to get into travel nursing, and I was gonna like be a travel nurse for like 3 years, and I was gonna go all the way out to California, and I live in Ohio, so that's like across the country. I was gonna go all the way to California, and I'm just gonna live my best life alone. I don't need anybody. That was really like my goal. Like, and I was happy with that. I'm not even gonna lie, I was happy. I was like, yeah, like that sounds like a good life. Cali, me by myself, the sun, I like it. God had other plans, and I'm so thankful that he had those other plans for me. I started to apply for these travel nurse positions. Like, I wasn't getting anything. I kept getting denials, and over like the dumbest stuff, like just denial here, denial there, and I'm like, oh, this is so annoying. Like, I just don't know what's going on. And so I ended up reaching out for prayer to my friend Roger, which is not my friend anymore. He's my boyfriend now, but he was my friend back then, and he had been my friend since we were in 8th or 9th grade. Roger has a history of being an atheist. When I grew up with him, he was agnostic, atheist, you know, type, very quizzical with me about the Bible, but we were still very close. We were good friends. I reached out to him because he had ended up getting saved a few years back. He is like really like just really involved. Like, once he got his faith, like he went just like full throttle. Like, I really admire that about him. And so after he had prayed for me, he invited me to his church. And honestly, I was like, Roger, like, I'm not going to this church, but at the same time, like, I kind of felt this pull to. I was like, well, God, this is just how I was. And I'm so embarrassed to say this, but I was like, well, God, if you want me to go to this church tomorrow, because it was like a Thursday service, I was like, you'll make sure that I get all my stuff done, because I need to do my hair, I need to do this, I need to do that. And I had all these idols I was worshiping, not literally, but like all these things I was worried about, other than getting to the house of the Lord. And I hadn't been to a physical church since pre-pandemic. So this would have been 2019, or if anything, early 2020. Guess what? God made me get all my stuff done. So I was like, okay, now what? So I contacted him and I said, you know, hey, like, I'm going to come to this church. And when I came to this church, I never experienced so much love in my life, honestly, from people who were my age. They knew that I was coming. They were expecting me. They hugged me. They asked me questions. From that point on, I really felt like, hey, like, I feel cared about here. This is a nice church. There was some things about the testimonies that I heard from teenagers, and I love teens and kids, that I cried in church. And I have never cried in church before, or cried over God, except for when I passed my NCLEX. You know, I never cried before. And so that was something that was really a pivotal moment for me, where I was like, this is not just your typical church. Like, I need to come back. And so I did. When I came back, I ended up getting involved in this small group called Refi. And when I got involved with Refi, that is the young adult small group, which I'm like knocking on the door of not being a young adult, but I really got close to the people that are there, and I felt like I had all these brothers and all these sisters who just loved me and cared about me. And I was like, wow, like, I remember myself being upset about losing or having like a distance between this one friend, you know. And here God has blessed me with like 30 friends that like love me and care for me. I see multiple times a week. Like, what was this? Like, this is so good. Like, I feel so whole in my heart. Like, wow, like this void has been filled. I want to kind of get into like what the Bible says about that, just so I can kind of back up what I'm saying, and that I know that this situation and this opportunity had to come from God, and it didn't come from anybody else. And so for the first verse I have is John 15:1-3. This is out of the Message, and it says, I am the real vine, and my Father is the farmer. He cuts off every branch of me that doesn't bear grapes, or bear fruit. And so we talk about, you know, the fruits of the Spirit. So kindness, joyfulness, you know, the 8 fruits. And I just had this question to myself, who in my life back then did not bear fruit? Or did they bear bad or poisonous fruit? And when I think back to that friendship I had, in the beginning, she was bearing, you know, kindness and things like that, but she started to bear poisonous fruit that every time I got around her, every time I talked to her, I felt like I was being fed this poison. And like, hey, like, this is not how you treat somebody, like, believer, not believer. This is just not right. And so while I was writing all of this down, I kind of felt God like telling me to look up a tree, like a poisonous tree. One of the trees that I came across was the poisonous guava tree. And one of the descriptions on Google was really interesting to me. It says that this tree is round and handsome, sweet scented fruits that are actually very lethal. And I was like, wow, like, why would a tree appear to be so nice? And it reminded me of, you know, the tree of knowledge in Genesis. And I'm like, but it can be so potentially lethal to you. And so I continued to read, and it said consumption of the fruits is potentially lethal and causes burns in the mouth and esophagus. Just touching the tree can cause the skin to blister and smoke to irritate the eyes. And I was like, wow, like burns in the mouth, you know, if you touch it, your skin blisters. And so it's just all around not good for you. And then it says, do not stand under this tree while it's raining. And I thought to myself, what trees was I standing under when it was raining? When it was raining in my life and I was going through a hard time, and I went and I stood under the tree, the poisonous tree of my friend, I just got burned up. You know, I got burned up in my mouth. I'm getting burned up in my skin. And I'm like, this isn't good for me. You know, this isn't a tree where I can take cover and be sheltered from the storm. And ultimately, everyone knows that you should be taking comfort in God. But it's so important for your friends to be, for one, believers in God and have a relationship with God, because they're going to guide you on those right steps. So when I think about my friend, I believe she believed in God, but she didn't have a relationship with him. And that's no judgment, because I believed in him too, and I didn't have a relationship with him. You would have asked me for advice when you were going through something, I would have told you to cuss the person out and call it a day. But now there is a godliness to me where I'm like, okay, what does scripture say about handling situations like this? Because scripture typically always has some kind of advice that you can give someone, some godly advice. It reminds me of 2 Corinthians 6:14, where it talks about being unequally yoked. So I pulled this from the Legacy version of the Bible. That's one of my favorites. Shout out to Roger for introducing me to the Legacy. The Legacy to me is like a step above the Message. And it's just perfect. It says, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers, for what partnership have righteous and lawlessness, or what fellowship has light with darkness? And this was something that was preached to me my entire life. Don't be unequally yoked. I heard it 1,000 times. And typically, like, you'll see it like in when it's talking about romantic relationships, but it goes for friendships too. And there's so much truth in that. Like, they will drag you down with them. You know, a lot of times you can bring them up, but understand that just partnering up and locking arms with these people is super dangerous to your relationship with God and just who you are as a person. So I decided to jump into my commentary as well. So my mom just bought me the Tony Evans Bible commentary. This here, it's super huge, but I have it all tabbed up so that it's easier to read. And I really liked the breakdown that was in this for verses 14 through 18, which is the unequally yoked verse. It says, to become partners with is what unequally yoked is. So it's kind of, you know, locking arms and saying, hey, we're partners in this thing. Let's do this life together. Well, if you lock arms and one is running really fast and the other one is running really slow, you're gonna fall down. One of you is gonna fall down, and it's going to be you. It also says close relationships or partnerships between believers and unbelievers will result in an unholy union. And then it goes into verse 15. What does a believer have in common with an unbeliever? It goes on to say whether it's a romantic relationship, intimate friendship, or a business partnership, such compromise negatively affects your intimacy with God. When you align yourself with those whose beliefs and lives are far from God, you'll find God distancing himself from you too. And that was so confirming for me to read that. I was like, yeah, that's exactly how I felt, that I wasn't as close with God. I wasn't where I needed to be. And while I'm not going to blame anyone for it, because at the end of the day, it's my decision, I had the free will. But over time, I just was separated from believers. But with all of that being said, I really truly feel that God is a multiplier. That it's like, okay, you feel like you're losing out on this one thing, but you're really going to gain so much more by me cutting off this poisonous fruit. You guys know that I'm a plant person. And I never believe in leaving leaves on that are dead. Why? Because the plant itself is sending nutrients to that leaf. And the leaf is already dead. Like, you're not going to do anything for it. Cut it off. Cut the leaf off and let the nutrients go to the good friends. And that's exactly what God did with me when he was getting rid of this friend. God knows the future. Okay? He knows what's going on, what's going to go on in your life. And I think that he truly puts certain obstacles and makes certain things go on in our lives where he's cutting us, you know, and chopping us and refining us to be where we are. Because I can tell you this, whether or not I had a good relationship or friendship with my friend or boyfriend or whatever, they could not have come on this journey with me. The journey of me being saved, the journey of me being baptized, they could not come on that journey. It would have been horrible, and it would have hindered me in my walk with God. What elevated my walk with God was the fact that I had friends that supported me, that were rooting for me, that I could go to, and they could pray for me. And it just kept leveling and leveling and leveling. And so the fact that I lost that bad leaf and I gained all these good ones, hallelujah, I am so excited. I'm so happy that it happened that way. And so that's kind of like, you just have to trust God's plan. And I'm not trying to be hypocritical because I am super stubborn, but I'm starting to just release myself to God and say, like, God, your will be done, basically. And so with him multiplying, it reminds me of one of my favorite verses in the Bible. It's Luke 6 verse 38, and I just took this out of the New King James Version because I just like how it sounds. And it says, give and it will be given to you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be put into your bosom. For with the same measure that you use, it will be measured back to you. And I think about losing that friend, gaining so many more, and I keep gaining. Now I have a godly romantic relationship with someone who has been my friend for years, which is super crazy to think about. But God keeps pressing it down and then shaking it together and then running over. It's like it's running over and over, where I'm so busy, you know, with my friends, and I get to see my friends and I see them multiple times a week, and it's this busyness of my life that I love, because it's like I'm just busy for one, being loved on and spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ with my friends. And I know that there wasn't a lot of razzle dazzle to this message, and I wanted it to be like that on purpose because I did not want to distract from how God truly moved in my life. This is something that I just had on my chest and I had to get out. And when I wrote this, it looks like I organized this on March 16th. It is April 17th. So really I organized this message a month ago and life was just happening, and so I got really busy and I wasn't able to do it. Even since then, you know, this was in the beginning stages of, you know, me being baptized and things like that. I have so many testimonies that just happened in a month. I could probably make 10 videos on them. And so don't be surprised if you see more of these videos. And I know that this is like a 180 from what I used to do with the makeup and stuff like that. But I just do not feel that that is where I'm called to be right now. I am just following, you know, God's instructions. And I feel like I need to spread what happened to me out into the world. I need to tell people about it and the goodness of God so that you know that it can happen for you too. So how I want to close this is just talking about the friends that I have now and the things that we do. Every Tuesday we meet for small group, and then I see them on Sundays for just the regular service, or Thursday, or both, depending on what my work schedule is. Recently I have gotten into a lot of outreach that we do downtown in Columbus. My boyfriend is the leader of evangelism in our church, and so my boyfriend is the leader of evangelism in our church, and so he will go downtown and we will pray for people. There's a lot of preaching, just bringing people to Christ, and that has been super eye-opening for me in a lot of good and bad ways. It makes me realize how far gone we are and how far from Christ we are, but there's a lot of good that happens, and so he does that. I've been out there twice now, and so I think he does it like maybe every 2 weeks or something like that. I don't know what his like exact schedule is with it or what he does, but we do that. You know, there's events at the church that we participate in, and like there's a ton of pictures, and I'm trying to work on like a little scrapbook of just my time here at this church, and kind of like just documenting everything. And I try to write and journal about what's going on, because it truly has been life-changing, just changing your set of friends or your relationship to being equally yoked, and all of you guys are on the same page, and just working to spread the gospel. It will change your life. With that being said, I just want to do a little plug because I think I should. My church that I attend is The Rock, Columbus. It is like right off the interstate. Is kind of small. It's like a little white church, and it is just small, like physically, but God is so there. God is so there, and the Spirit is there, and the love in that church is absolutely insane. And so I want to post a link in the description of my pastor's current message. He's currently doing a message on the end times, and I've never heard a message on the end times, and it's absolutely just, every time I go to church, like my mind is blown, you know. So I'm just going to plug that into the description box. And if you guys are from Columbus or traveling through Columbus, definitely come to The Rock. We have service on Thursdays at 7 and then on Sunday at 10 a.m. And we have really good worship, and the sermons are always super good. And so definitely stop by if you are in the area. With all that being said, I think that I'm just going to wrap this up. This is probably like a little bit of a long video, but I really hope that this helps somebody, just to keep in mind who your friends are, and stay equally yoked with your friends and your relationships. It weighs so much on your happiness and the decisions that you make. You have to have the right people in your life. And with that, stay blessed. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and let me know if there's anything else you would like to see in the comments. I will see you next time. Bye bye.